I'm Eleanor, 58 years old, and I've spent my life building success while appearing modest. When my daughter Madison got engaged to Jackson from the prestigious Preston family, I was thrilled. Years of raising her alone, working multiple jobs, and sacrificing everything seemed worth it. But as she climbed the social ladder, Madison grew distant. Last Tuesday, she looked me straight in the eyes and said I was too budget-conscious for her wedding planning. If only she knew Rosewood Estate, her dream venue, belonged to me. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever witnessed wedding drama unfold. Life wasn't always complicated with Madison. 22 years old and 7 months pregnant when her father walked out, I found myself alone and terrified about the future. Brian, my college sweetheart, decided fatherhood wasn't part of his 5-year plan. "I'm not ready for this," he said, packing his bags while I sat on our worn couch, hands protectively cradling my swollen belly. The door closed behind him, and just like that, I became a single mother before my child even took her first breath. Those early years were a blur of exhaustion. I worked 3 jobs just to keep a roof over our heads, waitressing at Denny's during the day, cleaning houses in the afternoons, and working as a night receptionist at a small motel. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. On particularly difficult nights, I'd count the hours between shifts, calculating how much rest I could squeeze in before Madison would wake crying for a feeding. "Mommy, aren't you going to eat?" 6-year-old Madison asked one evening. Her small face scrunched with concern as I set a plate of spaghetti in front of her. "I already ate while cooking, sweetie," I lied, my stomach growling in protest. The truth was we couldn't afford enough food for both of us that week, and her growing body needed the nutrition more than mine. Despite the hardships, we had beautiful moments too. Sunday mornings were sacred. Our one luxury was pancakes shaped like animals. Madison would giggle uncontrollably as I attempted to create elephant pancakes that often looked more like blobs with trunks. "That's not an elephant, Mommy. Try again," she'd laugh. And those moments made every sacrifice worthwhile. During particularly harsh winters, our apartment's heating would frequently break down. We'd build blanket forts in the living room, huddling together for warmth while I read her stories by flashlight. "This is better than any palace," Madison would declare, snuggling against me as I tried to hide my worry about the heating bill. Through it all, I made a solemn promise to myself. One day, we would have financial security. Not for luxury's sake, but for peace of mind. I started taking night classes in business management whenever my mother could watch Madison. Sometimes I'd fall asleep over my textbooks, exhaustion claiming me, only to wake and continue studying with renewed determination. Madison was a bright child, curious and kind. She would help me fold laundry without being asked, making up stories about each garment as if they were characters in a grand adventure. Her kindness shone through in how she'd save half her cookie from lunch to give to me when I picked her up from school, proudly announcing, "I saved the best part for you, Mommy." When Madison turned 12, I launched my first small business venture, a cleaning service catering to busy professionals. Starting with just myself and 2 part-time employees, I cleaned homes during the day while Madison was at school. My hands grew rough from cleaning products, but each client referral felt like a step toward stability. It was during Madison's high school years that I noticed the first troubling signs. As a sophomore, she became intensely aware of brand names and social status. The first time she seemed embarrassed by our modest apartment was when she hesitated to invite friends over for her 15th birthday. "What if we had it at the community center instead?" she suggested, avoiding my eyes. "Is something wrong with having it here?" I asked, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. "It's just, Amber's birthday was at her country club, and Taylor's parents rented out that cool bowling alley." Her voice trailed off, but the message was clear. Despite this emerging status consciousness, I remained dedicated to giving Madison opportunities one never had. When she expressed interest in joining the debate team, I worked extra weekend shifts to afford the tournaments and formal attire. Watching her confidently deliver arguments in her first competition, I felt a fierce pride that made every extra hour of work worthwhile. Madison's academic achievements were impressive: honor roll every semester, class vice president, and eventually acceptance to a prestigious university with a partial scholarship. I took out loans to cover the remainder, determined that financial constraints wouldn't limit her future. The day we drove to her college campus remains etched in my memory. Our car was packed with dorm essentials, much of which I'd carefully budgeted for months to afford. As I helped her arrange her tiny dorm room, I noticed how she brightened when her roommate, a girl with obvious wealth, arrived with designer luggage. "Your first day of the rest of your life," I said, hugging her goodbye in the parking lot. Something in her quick, distracted embrace felt different. Looking back, that was the emotional turning point, the moment Madison began to see herself as separate from her humble beginnings. As I drove home alone to our apartment, tears streaming down my face, I didn't realize just how much that separation would grow in the years to come. Part of me sensed the shift. But I consoled myself with the thought that all parents must eventually let their children forge their own paths. While Madison immersed herself in college life, I poured my energy into growing my business. The cleaning service expanded rapidly, gaining corporate clients and hotels alongside residential customers. Within 2 years, I had 20 employees and a reputation for exceptional service. Though profits increased, I maintained my modest lifestyle, funneling most earnings back into the business or into careful investments. Rachel, my best friend since high school, often questioned my frugality. "Eleanor, you're becoming successful. Why are you still living in that tiny apartment? Treat yourself a little." "I'm playing the long game," I'd respond. Every dollar invested now means more security later. Real estate became my passion after a seminar I attended through the local business association. Starting small, I purchased a duplex, renovated it while living in half, and rented the other unit. The rental income covered the mortgage and provided additional cash flow. This pattern continued: buy, improve, rent, or sell, building my portfolio methodically. The opportunity to purchase Rosewood Estate came unexpectedly. A magnificent property with historical significance, it had fallen into foreclosure after its previous owners faced financial difficulties. The Georgian-style mansion sat on 15 acres of manicured grounds with mature oak trees and a natural pond. Despite its neglected state, I immediately recognized its potential. "You want to buy what?" Rachel exclaimed when I showed her the property listing. "That's going to require a massive investment. It's undervalued because of the extensive renovations needed," I explained, excitement building as I outlined my vision. "With my connections in construction and design, I can transform it into the premier wedding venue in the region. The location is perfect, just far enough from the city to feel exclusive, but still accessible." The purchase depleted much of my savings, but my business acumen hadn't failed me. Over 18 months, I oversaw every detail of the restoration, reinforcing structural elements while preserving historical features, installing modern amenities disguised within classic aesthetics, and landscaping the grounds to showcase natural beauty with strategic event spaces. Rosewood Estate opened to acclaim, quickly becoming the most sought-after wedding venue in 3 states. Booking requests flooded in, often 2 years in advance. I hired Diana, a talented venue manager with extensive hospitality experience, to handle day-to-day operations while I continued expanding my business portfolio. Though successful, I maintained my unpretentious lifestyle, finding more satisfaction in financial security than outward displays of wealth. Throughout this period of professional growth, my relationship with Madison underwent a troubling transformation. During her sophomore year, she secured an internship at a prestigious marketing firm through a connection made with a wealthy classmate's father. Her social circle shifted dramatically. Suddenly her friends were exclusively from affluent backgrounds. Our phone conversations grew shorter and less frequent. When I visited campus, Madison always seemed rushed, limiting our time together to quick meals before she hurried off to social engagements. I noticed changes in her speech patterns, her wardrobe, even her mannerisms, all calibrated to fit her new social environment. "Mom, could you maybe wear something a bit more Current when you visit next time, she suggested during her junior year, eyeing my serviceable but unfashionable blazer. There's this brunch with some friends I thought you might come to. I made efforts to maintain our connection, sending care packages with her favorite homemade cookies, calling regularly despite her increasingly brief responses, and showing genuine interest in her new friends and activities. Yet each attempt seemed to highlight the growing distance between us. The summer before her senior year, Madison announced she wouldn't be coming home. I got this amazing opportunity to intern in the city, she explained over the phone. And Justine's parents said I could stay at their penthouse since they'll be in Europe. That's wonderful about the internship, I said, swallowing my disappointment. But I haven't seen you since Christmas. Couldn't you visit for even a weekend? It's really important for my career, Mom, she replied, an edge of impatience in her voice. You always said you wanted me to have opportunities. She was right, of course. I had always emphasized the importance of building her future. But somewhere along the way, I'd become peripheral to that future rather than part of it. After graduation, Madison secured a position at a top marketing firm in the city. I attended the ceremony, bursting with pride despite being seated alone while other parents clustered in family groups. When I tried to introduce myself to her friends afterward, Madison quickly steered the conversations to end, never acknowledging my business success or the financial support that had helped make her education possible. It was during this period that Madison met Jackson Preston at a charity gala, an event far too expensive for me to attend. The Prestons were old money, with family connections throughout the business and political world. When Madison first mentioned him, her voice contained an excitement I hadn't heard in years. He's taking me to St. Bart's next weekend on his family's jet, she gushed during one of our infrequent calls. His father practically runs the financial district. 6 months into their relationship, Madison brought Jackson to meet me. I prepared for days, cooking her childhood favorites and cleaning my modest but comfortable home until it gleamed. When they arrived, I noticed Madison's tense posture, her eyes darting around as if seeing my home through Jackson's eyes. Jackson was polite if somewhat reserved, asking occasional questions about my life, while Madison quickly redirected conversations whenever my cleaning business came up. Not once did she mention my real estate investments or Rosewood Estate. My mother has always been so practical and budget-conscious, she said with a tight smile when Jackson commented on the simple but hearty meal. The comment stung, reframing my financial prudence as a character limitation rather than a conscious choice. During dessert, Madison shared stories of our early years, carefully edited to emphasize her achievements while minimizing our financial struggles. We were always comfortable, she insisted when Jackson asked about her childhood. Mom just believes in living simply. I remained silent, recognizing that my daughter had created a narrative that felt safer to her, one where her background appeared more aligned with her current aspirations. Though it hurt, I understood the insecurity driving her behavior. Success hadn't come easily to me, and perhaps Madison feared that acknowledging our humble beginnings might somehow diminish her in Jackson's eyes. After they left, I sat alone in my kitchen, wondering where I had gone wrong. Had my emphasis on financial security somehow taught her that worth was measured by wealth? Or was this simply the natural course of a child creating her own identity, separate from her parent? Either way, the growing chasm between us felt increasingly unbridgeable. The call came on a Sunday morning, Madison's voice bubbling with excitement as she announced her engagement. Jackson had proposed during a weekend trip to Paris, presenting her with a family heirloom diamond ring that she described in minute detail. "It's huge, Mom. And the history behind it, it's been in the Preston family for 4 generations. That's wonderful, sweetheart," I said, genuinely happy for her joy while trying to ignore the pang that came from realizing I'd heard about the Paris trip only after they'd returned. "I'm so pleased for you both. The Prestons want to host an engagement party at their country club next month," she continued. "Nothing too extravagant, just 100 or so of their closest friends and family." The engagement party provided my first real glimpse into the world Madison now inhabited. The Preston family home sat on a sprawling estate, with manicured gardens and a view of the lake. Caterers in crisp uniforms circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres while a string quartet played softly in the background. Patricia Preston, Jackson's mother, greeted me with practiced politeness. "Eleanor, how lovely to finally meet Madison's mother. We've heard so much about you." Her tone suggested the opposite, that Madison had shared very little. Richard Preston, Jackson's father, barely acknowledged my presence beyond a firm handshake before turning his attention to more important guests. Throughout the evening, I observed Madison seamlessly navigating this world of wealth and privilege. She laughed at inside jokes, referenced shared vacations, and discussed people and places completely unfamiliar to me. Occasionally, she would include me in conversations, but always with a brief, contextualizing introduction. My mom has always been so practical about these things. Wedding planning began immediately, with Patricia taking charge alongside a renowned planner named Veronica, whose services alone cost more than my annual mortgage. I was invited to the initial venue meeting as mother of the bride, though my input was clearly not expected. "We've arranged to tour several potential venues," Veronica explained during our first meeting at the Prestons' home. "All exclusive properties that would suit the occasion." The third venue on their list was Rosewood Estate. I said nothing when it was mentioned, curious how the situation would unfold. On the day of the tour, I arrived separately, parking my modest sedan away from the line of luxury cars. Diana, my venue manager, greeted our group with professional warmth. She faltered momentarily upon seeing me, confusion flickering across her face before her training reasserted itself. "Welcome to Rosewood Estate," she began, leading us through the grand entrance hall with its sweeping staircase and crystal chandelier. This historic property dates back to 1887 and has been painstakingly restored to maintain its original character while offering modern amenities. Madison gasped audibly at the main ballroom with its soaring ceilings, marble columns, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens. "It's perfect," she whispered, clutching Jackson's arm. As Diana continued the tour, showing the bridal suite, various ceremony locations, and reception spaces, I noticed her occasionally glancing at me with uncertainty. During a moment when the others were admiring the garden terrace, she approached. "Ms. Williams, I wasn't expecting you today." "Should I?" "Please continue as normal," I murmured quietly. "I'd prefer if my connection to Rosewood isn't mentioned just yet." Diana nodded discreetly and resumed her professional demeanor. As the tour concluded in the main office to discuss pricing and availability, Madison and Patricia grew increasingly enthusiastic. "It's absolutely stunning," Madison gushed. "I can't imagine getting married anywhere else." "The Preston name does carry certain expectations," Patricia added with a meaningful look at Veronica. "This venue seems to meet our standards." When Diana presented the substantial pricing package, Patricia waved it away. "The cost isn't an issue. Richard and I will handle everything." I sat quietly, watching my daughter fall in love with the venue I had created, restored, and nurtured, all without knowing it represented the success I had built while she was creating distance between us. After booking Rosewood, wedding planning accelerated. Weekly meetings covered everything from floral arrangements to menu tastings, each decision accompanied by lavish budgets that made my careful financial management seem miserly by comparison. During a dinner at the Prestons' home to discuss the guest list, Richard casually mentioned the cost of the wedding. "We're looking at around $300,000, give or take. Naturally, we'll cover everything." "That's very generous," I responded carefully. "Well, we wouldn't expect you to contribute," Patricia said with a thin smile. "Madison has explained your situation. We completely understand financial limitations." Madison shifted uncomfortably, but didn't correct her future mother-in-law's assumption. Later, when I offered to pay for the bridal gown as a traditional mother-of-the-bride expense, Madison hesitated. "That's sweet, Mom, but it's a designer piece. Almost $15,000. The Prestons insisted on covering it. Each interaction reinforced my growing invisibility in the process, invited to participate in appearance only, while decisions were made without genuine interest in my input. Despite the hurt, my love for Madison never wavered. I wanted her wedding day to be perfect, even if my role had been reduced to that of a polite observer. 6 months before the wedding, Veronica scheduled a comprehensive budget review meeting at the Prestons' home. I arrived promptly, finding Madison, Jackson, and his parents already seated around the dining table with spreadsheets and sample books spread before them. "Eleanor, thank you for joining us," Veronica said with professional courtesy. "We're just reviewing the final budgets for each aspect of the celebration." For over an hour, I listened as they discussed expenditures that seemed increasingly extravagant: custom-blown glass chargers for each place setting, imported flowers out of season, a renowned chef flown in from Paris for the rehearsal dinner. And for the venue, Veronica continued, "Rosewood Estate requires the final payment of $60,000 by next month to secure the date." "Not a problem," Richard said dismissively. "Though I still think they're overcharging for what they provide." I bit my tongue, knowing the pricing was actually quite reasonable for the level of service and exclusivity Rosewood offered. "Should we discuss Eleanor's contribution?" Patricia asked, looking directly at me. "Perhaps something manageable like the welcome bags for out-of-town guests?" Before I could respond, Madison interjected. "Actually, I think it might be best if Mom doesn't worry about the financial aspects." She turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're always so budget-conscious, and this wedding is going to be quite elaborate. I wouldn't want you stressing about costs." The room fell silent. The words hung in the air, their implication clear. I was too poor to participate meaningfully in my only daughter's wedding. "Madison," Jackson began uncertainly, apparently uncomfortable with her directness. "It's fine," Madison insisted. "Mom understands. She's always been practical about money." "Absolutely," Patricia added smoothly. "Eleanor, please don't concern yourself with any of this. We're more than happy to handle everything. It's our pleasure." I maintained my composure through sheer force of will, though I felt a deep crack forming in my heart. "I appreciate your generosity," I managed to say, my voice steadier than I felt. As the meeting continued, Madison outlined her vision for various aspects of the celebration, occasionally throwing comments my way that felt like afterthoughts. "Mom, you'll just need to show up for the dress fitting next month. Everything else is handled." After the meeting concluded, I excused myself quickly, needing space to process the hurt. In my car, safely out of sight, I finally allowed tears to fall. The pain wasn't about money, it was about being dismissed by my own daughter, seeing how little she valued me beyond my perceived financial contribution. That evening, Rachel came over with wine and sympathy after I called her in distress. "You should tell her the truth," she insisted, pouring me another glass. "Let her know you own the damn place she's so excited about. See how that changes the dynamic with her precious Preston in-laws." I shook my head, wiping away tears. That would only make things worse. If she suddenly respects me because of money, what does that say about our relationship? About the values I tried to teach her? "But you've worked so hard, Eleanor. You deserve recognition for that success." "I didn't work hard for recognition," I replied. "I did it for security, for peace of mind. If Madison only values wealth and status now, then I've failed as a mother, regardless of my business success." Rachel sighed, squeezing my hand. "You haven't failed. She's just lost her way a bit. Maybe finding out might shock her back to her senses." I considered this possibility, but something held me back from revealing the truth. Perhaps it was pride, or perhaps a deeper hope that Madison would recognize her behavior without financial incentive to do so. The breaking point came a week later. I had returned to the Prestons' home to drop off some family photos Madison had requested for a wedding slideshow. As I approached the partially open door to the living room, I heard Madison's voice. "I know, it's a little awkward. Mom's just so simple. She doesn't understand how things work in our circle." "Darling, you don't need to apologize," Patricia's voice replied. "We all come from somewhere. It's where we end up that matters. I just worry she'll seem out of place at the country club rehearsal dinner. Maybe we should consider having her skip that part? Say it's just for the wedding party?" The pain of those words, the casual cruelty from the daughter I had sacrificed everything for, left me breathless. I placed the photos on the hallway table and left without announcing my presence, a decision forming in my mind. That night, I wrote Madison a brief email, after consideration. I think it best I take a step back from wedding planning as you suggested. I'll be there for whatever you need me for, but will otherwise give you and the Preston space to create the day you envision. Her reply came quickly. Thanks for understanding, Mom. It's probably easier this way. I'll let you know about the important dates. The casual dismissal confirmed what I already knew. In Madison's new world, I had become an inconvenience to be managed rather than a mother to be treasured. Though it broke my heart, I decided to respect her wishes while maintaining my dignity. I would attend her wedding, love her unconditionally, but no longer accept disrespect under the guise of inclusion. With 3 months until the wedding, I maintained minimal contact with Madison, responding to her occasional texts about dress fittings and hair trials, but otherwise giving her the space she had implicitly requested. The distance pained me deeply, but I channeled my energy into ensuring Rosewood Estate would provide an impeccable experience, even if my involvement remained unknown. Behind the scenes, I worked closely with Diana and the venue staff on special preparations. I want to add some personal touches for my daughter's wedding, I explained during a private meeting with the team. She doesn't know I own Rosewood, and I'd like to keep it that way for now. Of course, Ms. Williams, Diana replied with understanding. What did you have in mind? I shared my vision for subtle enhancements, custom lighting that would highlight the architectural features Madison had admired during her tour, specialty cocktails incorporating her favorite flavors, and vintage china I remembered her admiring years ago in an antique shop. It's unusual, my head gardener commented when I requested particular flowers be added to the garden beds that would bloom precisely during the wedding week. But we can adjust the planting schedule to make it happen. And you're sure you don't want any recognition for these extras? Diana asked. They represent significant added value. Completely sure, I confirmed. Sometimes love means giving without acknowledgement. Throughout this period, I reflected deeply on motherhood and the nature of unconditional love. While Madison's behavior hurt me, my love for her never diminished. I recalled her as a toddler, arms outstretched for a hug, as a child proudly showing me her artwork, as a teenager nervous before her first date. Those memories reinforced my commitment to supporting her happiness, even from the sidelines. 2 months before the wedding, Madison called to inform me about her bachelorette weekend in Miami. It's just going to be my bridesmaids and some college friends, she explained. Very exclusive resort. Everything planned by Veronica. The unspoken message was clear. I wasn't invited. That sounds lovely, I replied, keeping my tone light. I hope you have a wonderful time. Mom? Her voice softened slightly. Are you upset about anything? You've been different lately. For a moment, I considered addressing the hurt directly. Instead, I said, I'm just giving you the space you seem to want, Madison. This is your time with your friends and new family. Right, she replied, audible relief in her voice at avoiding a difficult conversation. Thanks for understanding. While Madison enjoyed her bachelorette weekend, I personally supervised the installation of a custom stained glass panel in the Rosewood Bridal Suite, a delicate pattern incorporating elements that represented significant moments in Madison's life. The artisan who created it worked from photographs and stories I shared, capturing fragments of her journey in colored glass that would cast rainbow patterns across the room on her wedding morning. This is extraordinary, Diana commented, watching as the final piece was secured. Will you tell her eventually? Perhaps someday, I replied. When it matters less. 3 weeks before the wedding, I implemented my plan for a controlled crisis. After consulting with Diana, we fabricated an issue with the venue's main electrical system, suggesting renovations might be necessary during the week of Madison's wedding. Diana made the call to Veronica, expressing appropriate concern. We're doing everything possible to resolve this before the Preston Williams wedding, but I wanted to alert you to potential complications. The reaction was immediate. Within an hour, my phone rang. Madison's name flashing on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, listening as her panicked message unfolded. Mom, there's a disaster with the venue. Something about electrical problems. They might have to move our wedding date or location. The Prestons are furious, and I don't know what to do. Please call me back. I waited 30 minutes before returning her call, finding her in tears. Everything's ruined, she sobbed. The venue says they might have to close for repairs. All the other places are booked. Mom, what am I going to do? Take a deep breath, I counseled calmly. There must be a solution. Who have you spoken with at Rosewood? Some manager named Diana. She keeps saying they're exploring options, but nothing concrete. The Prestons' connections aren't helping for once. Would you like me to try talking to them? I offered. Sometimes these venues respond better to a calm approach. Would you? The relief in her voice was palpable. I know it's not your problem, but I'm desperate. Of course I'll help. I assured her. You're my daughter. That's what mothers do. Thank you, she whispered, vulnerability replacing her usual polished tone. I don't know what I'd do without you. Those words, the first genuine appreciation she'd expressed in years, warmed my heart despite the circumstances. Perhaps this manufactured crisis might create an opportunity for authentic reconnection. I'll go to Rosewood first thing tomorrow, I promised. Let's solve this together. The following morning, I arrived at Rosewood Estate dressed more professionally than usual, knowing this would be the day everything changed. Madison met me in the parking lot. Her typically perfect appearance disheveled from stress. They're saying the electrical issues might affect the climate control system, she explained frantically as we walked toward the main entrance. Can you imagine? 300 guests sweating through a summer wedding. Let's see what can be done, I replied calmly, giving her shoulder a reassuring squeeze. Diana greeted us in the lobby with professional concern. Ms. Williams, thank you for coming. And Madison, we understand how upsetting this must be. This is my mother, Eleanor Williams, Madison introduced impatiently. She's helping me navigate this disaster. We need to speak with whoever's in charge, the owner, if possible. Diana's eyes flickered to mine briefly. Of course. Please, follow me to the main office. As we walked through the grand hallway, several staff members nodded respectfully in my direction. One approached directly, clipboard in hand. Ms. Williams, about the Robinson wedding next month. Should we proceed with the special lighting installation you approved? Madison paused, confusion crossing her face. Why is he asking you about another wedding? Before I could respond, the head chef emerged from the kitchen. Ms. Williams, I wanted to confirm the menu adjustments you suggested for the Preston Williams wedding. The specialized dessert course is quite ambitious, but we're excited about the challenge. Madison turned to me, her expression morphing from confusion to shock. Mom? What's going on? Why do they know you? We had reached the main office. Diana opened the door, revealing an elegant space with a large desk positioned before floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens. Perhaps you should continue this conversation privately, Diana suggested, withdrawing discreetly. In the sudden silence, Madison stared at me. Mom? Why are the staff acting like they know you? What's happening? I moved behind the desk, running my fingers along its polished surface. This isn't how I imagined telling you, I began quietly. But yes, Madison, I own Rosewood Estate. I have for the past 7 years. Her mouth opened and closed without sound, her face paling. That's impossible. You're a cleaning lady. You live in that tiny house. You can't afford. This is a multi-million-dollar property. I started as a cleaning lady, I corrected gently. But my business grew. I invested wisely. Rosewood was my largest project. I purchased it as a foreclosure and restored it personally. It's now the cornerstone of my real estate portfolio, along with several other commercial properties. Madison sank into a chair, visibly struggling to reconcile this revelation with her perception of me. Why didn't you tell me? All this time, while the Prestons were, while I was. She couldn't finish the sentence. The implications of her behavior suddenly laid bare. I never told you because I wanted to be valued for who I am, not what I own, I explained. Success for me wasn't about recognition or status. It was about security and creating something meaningful. But you let me believe. Tears filled her eyes. You let me treat you like you were nothing. I let you make your own choices, I corrected. And those choices revealed what you truly valued. A knock at the door interrupted us. Diana entered with Jackson and his parents in tow, their faces tight with concern. Eleanor. Patricia's voice held confusion. What are you doing in the owner's office? She is the owner. Madison said quietly, her voice hollow with realization. The shock on the Prestons' faces might have been satisfying under different circumstances. Richard's jaw literally dropped, while Patricia's carefully maintained composure cracked visibly. That's not possible, Richard sputtered. This property is worth. I'm well aware of its value, Mr. Preston. I interrupted calmly. I've invested considerably in its restoration and operation. All this time, Jackson said slowly, looking between Madison and me. When we toured the venue. When we signed the contracts. I chose not to mention my ownership, I confirmed. I wanted Madison's wedding planning to proceed naturally, without my position influencing decisions. And the electrical issues? Patricia asked sharply. A misunderstanding, I replied smoothly. Easily resolved. Your wedding will proceed exactly as planned, with all the special enhancements I've personally arranged. An uncomfortable silence filled the room as the implications settled. Madison stared at the floor, tears streaming down her face. Finally, she raised her eyes to meet mine. I've been horrible to you, she whispered. Absolutely horrible. You've been confused about what matters, I corrected gently. I was ashamed. She admitted, her voice breaking. Not of you, never really of you. Of where we came from. Of struggling. When I met Jackson and his family, I wanted so badly to belong in their world. And you thought I would embarrass you. She nodded miserably. I convinced myself I was protecting you from feeling out of place. But really, I was protecting my new image. She covered her face with her hands. How can you even look at me after how I've treated you? I moved around the desk and knelt beside her chair. Because I'm your mother. Because I remember the kind, compassionate girl you were. Because I believe that girl is still inside you, just lost for a while. Madison broke down completely then, collapsing into my arms like she hadn't done since childhood. I'm so sorry, Mom. So sorry. Over her shoulder, I saw the Prestons shifting uncomfortably. Jackson stepped forward, his expression genuinely remorseful. Ms. Williams, I owe you an apology too. I should have challenged Madison's behavior toward you. And my parents. He glanced back at them. We've all been incredibly disrespectful. Richard cleared his throat. Indeed. It appears we've made some unfortunate assumptions. Perhaps we should give them privacy, Patricia suggested, clearly eager to retreat from the uncomfortable situation. After they left, Madison and I talked for hours, truly talked for the first time in years. She shared her insecurities, her fear of not belonging in Jackson's world, her worries that her background would somehow disqualify her from the future she envisioned. Success isn't about money or status, I told her, echoing lessons I thought I'd taught her long ago. It's about integrity, hard work, and treating people with dignity. I'm disappointed not because you wanted nice things, but because you were willing to discard people, to discard me, to get them. I don't know how to make this right, she said, her voice small. Start by remembering who you are, I suggested. Not what you own or who you know, but the values that define you. The rest will follow. As the sun began to set, casting golden light through the windows of Rosewood Estate, Madison and I tentatively began rebuilding the bridge between us, a bridge damaged by misunderstanding and superficial values, but not yet completely destroyed. The morning of Madison's wedding dawned clear and perfect. At Rosewood Estate, staff executed the carefully orchestrated preparations with precision. I arrived early, no longer hiding my role as both mother of the bride and owner of the venue. In the bridal suite, where Madison was preparing with her bridesmaids, I knocked softly before entering. The room fell silent as I stepped inside, the other young women exchanging uncertain glances. Could I have a moment alone with my daughter? I asked quietly, after they filed out. Madison turned to face me. She looked breathtaking in her wedding gown, but it was the openness in her expression, a vulnerability I hadn't seen in years, that truly moved me. "Mom," she began, gesturing around the beautiful room. "The stained glass, it tells my story, doesn't it? That's why the colors reminded me of my childhood bedroom." I nodded, pleased she had recognized the personal touches. "I wanted you to have pieces of your journey surrounding you today. See there?" I pointed to a particular pattern. "That represents the butterfly habitat we built when you were 9. Tears welled in her eyes. "I was awful to you. Unforgivably awful. How did you still do all this for me?" "Love doesn't keep score, Madison," I said simply. "It never has conditions or expiration dates." She crossed the room and embraced me carefully, mindful of her dress. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "Forgiveness isn't about deserving," I replied, smoothing a strand of hair away from her face. "It's about healing and moving forward." Since the revelation 3 weeks earlier, Madison had made genuine efforts to reconnect with me. She had insisted on revising the wedding plans to give me a meaningful role, not because of my ownership of Rosewood, but because of my place in her life. The Prestons, too, had adjusted their behavior, their newfound respect transparently tied to my financial status, but at least openly acknowledging my contribution to the celebration. "I've been thinking about what you said," Madison confessed. "About values and success. I resigned from the marketing firm yesterday." "You did what?" This surprised me completely. The culture there was toxic, all about status and appearances. Everything I got caught up in. She squared her shoulders. "I want to build something meaningful, like you did. Maybe not exactly the same path, but something that creates value rather than just chasing validation." Pride swelled in my chest, not for her career decision itself, but for the reflection and authenticity behind it. "I have something for you," I said, retrieving a small box from my purse. Inside was a delicate gold locket. "It's beautiful," Madison whispered as I fastened it around her neck. "Open it," I urged. Inside was a tiny photograph of the two of us from her childhood, both smiling widely, my arms protectively around her small shoulders. On the opposite side was inscribed, "Worth comes from within, not from what we own." "I'll never forget again," she promised, one tear escaping down her cheek. The ceremony proceeded perfectly. Standing at the back of the garden, watching Madison walk down the aisle toward Jackson, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: pride in the woman she was becoming, hope for her future, and gratitude for the painful but necessary lessons we had both learned. During the reception, Madison surprised me by taking the microphone during dinner. "I want to thank someone very special," she began, her voice steady. "My mother, Eleanor Williams, taught me everything important I know about resilience, hard work, and unconditional love." She looked directly at me, sincerity shining in her eyes. "She raised me alone, working multiple jobs to give me opportunities. And while I lost sight of those lessons for a while, she never stopped loving me. Never stopped believing in me." "Mom, I hope to become half the woman you are." The room erupted in applause. Across the table, I noticed Patricia Preston's tight smile and Richard's evaluating gaze. Their respect might be newfound and conditional, but Madison's recognition came from a place of genuine appreciation. Later, during the father-daughter dance traditionally included in weddings, Madison made another unexpected choice. The DJ announced, and now Madison would like to share a special dance with her mother, Eleanor, who has been both mother and father throughout her life. As we swayed together on the dance floor, Madison whispered, "Is it strange that I'm grateful for what happened? If you hadn't created that fake venue crisis, I might never have learned the truth about Rosewood, about the Prestons, about myself." "Sometimes we need disruption to see clearly," I replied. "But I believe you would have found your way eventually." A month after the wedding, Madison and Jackson returned from their honeymoon and made a point of visiting my home, not Rosewood Estate, but the modest house I still preferred to live in despite my financial success. "I don't understand why you stay here when you could live in a mansion," Jackson commented, looking around the comfortable but unassuming living room. "This is home," I explained simply. "My worth isn't in my address. The freedom to choose where and how I live, that's the real luxury. Madison nodded, understanding dawning in her eyes. That's what I never got before. You were never budget conscious, because you had to be. You chose simplicity because you valued substance over show. Exactly, I confirmed. Though I admit, I do enjoy the irony that you selected my venue for your wedding without knowing it was mine. We all laughed, the tension of previous months finally dissolving into something new, a relationship based on mutual respect rather than superficial expectations. Over the following year, Madison and I rebuilt our connection on stronger foundations. She started her own small business, consulting for nonprofit organizations, finding fulfillment in work aligned with deeper values. The Prestons eventually adjusted their perception of me, though I maintained a polite distance, uninterested in relationships based primarily on financial standing. The greatest gift from this painful journey was the restoration of authenticity between my daughter and me. No relationship is perfect, but honesty provides the foundation for genuine connection. So if you find yourself measuring worth by possessions or status, remember my story. True wealth comes from integrity, from loving unconditionally, and from being valued for who you are rather than what you own. Has someone in your life ever made assumptions about you based on appearances? Have you ever been underestimated or overlooked? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more real-life experiences, and share with someone who might need this reminder about what truly matters. Thank you for listening to my journey. May it help you reflect on the authentic relationships in your own life.